The German fighter touched down gently on a British runway. Its pilot believed he had reached occupied France. Men beside the airfield knew otherwise. This was Pembrey in South Wales on June 23, 1942. The aircraft carried German markings and remained almost completely intact. Britain had just received an extraordinary intelligence prize. The fighter was a Focke-Wulf 193. For months, Royal Air Force pilots had reported its disturbing performance. Now the machine stood before British witnesses on its own wheels. Its arrival began with a violent air battle over southwestern England. German fighters had intercepted British bombers and their Spitfire escorts. Oberleutnant Armin Faber joined the fighting in the new Focke-Wulf. During the combat, formations scattered and pilots became separated. Faber fought Sergeant František Tretnar of No. 310 Squadron. Tretnar escaped his damaged Spitfire by parachute. Faber then turned toward what he believed was the French coast. Disorientation transformed a successful combat flight into a historic mistake. Faber crossed the Bristol Channel while believing he crossed the English Channel. The coastline ahead seemed to confirm his expectation. An airfield appeared near the shore. He circled, lowered his landing gear, and entered the circuit. Nothing on the ground immediately warned him away. Faber landed and taxied toward the waiting personnel. The duty pilot, Sergeant Jeffries, recognized the German aircraft. He had no conventional weapon immediately available. He approached carrying a flare pistol. Faber was taken prisoner without damage to his fighter. The physical evidence mattered more than the dramatic capture. British intelligence already knew the Focke-Wulf was formidable. Pilots had encountered the type over northern France since 1941. Its appearance had disrupted a comfortable assumption. The Spitfire Mk V had performed well against the Messerschmitt 109. Many expected another German fighter to offer only incremental improvement. Combat reports suggested something worse. The new aircraft could accelerate rapidly and roll with exceptional speed. It could often choose when to begin or leave a fight. Its heavy armament made even brief firing opportunities dangerous. British pilots could observe those advantages under combat conditions. They could not yet measure them with confidence. Every encounter included unequal altitude, fuel, surprise, weather, and pilot judgment. A lost engagement did not automatically prove a superior aircraft. A successful escape did not explain which design feature made it possible. Intelligence officers therefore worked with fragments. They collected pilot reports, photographs, wreckage, and intercepted information. None provided a complete flying aircraft for controlled examination. That uncertainty encouraged hope. Perhaps experienced German pilots were creating an exaggerated impression. Perhaps the new fighter performed brilliantly only at certain heights. Perhaps damaged examples and hurried reports concealed serious weaknesses. The aircraft at Pembrey removed those protections. It was not scattered wreckage from a crash site. Its engine worked, its controls worked, its instruments, weapons, and systems remained available for inspection. British specialists could examine how the machine was built. More importantly, British test pilots could fly it. They could compare it directly against operational Allied fighters. The question was no longer whether combat reports felt convincing. The question became measurable. How fast could the German fighter climb? How quickly could it accelerate? Could a Spitfire follow its role? Which aircraft controlled an engagement at different altitudes? The answers would affect more than technical curiosity. They would shape warnings, sent to squadrons facing the aircraft daily. They would influence tactics, training, and aircraft development. They could also confirm an uncomfortable possibility. Britain as standard frontline fighter might already be outclassed. Before those answers came, the captured aircraft had to be secured. Its unfamiliar systems could conceal hazards. Its engine required knowledge British ground crews did not possess. Its German markings also made any flight over Britain dangerous. The machine was therefore removed for controlled examination. At the Royal Aircraft Establishment, specialists prepared it for British trials. It received British identification, and the serial MP49, the accidental visitor, was becoming a test subject. Faber had landed expecting safety among his own forces. Instead, he delivered the evidence Britain had been missing. The next confrontation would happen without gunfire. British pilots would meet the Focke-Wulf under measured conditions. This time, the German fighter could not disappear across the channel. British engineers first confronted a machine designed around speed, access, and concentrated force. The Focke-Wulf looked compact beside the Spitfire. Its broad radial engine gave the nose a blunt appearance. That shape had encouraged some early British uncertainty about its power plant. The intact aircraft ended the speculation. Inside sat a 14-cylinder BMW radial engine. It produced strong power without requiring a vulnerable liquid cooling system. The installation also revealed careful attention to airflow and temperature control. Cooling air entered through the front of the cowling. An engine-driven fan pulled that air across the cylinders. This allowed a tightly enclosed engine with relatively low aerodynamic drag. The result contradicted a familiar assumption. A radial fighter did not need a wide and inefficient engine installation. German designers had combined durability with a surprisingly clean shape. The British team also examined how Faber had controlled that engine. Many fighters demanded constant attention to several separate controls. The pilot adjusted throttle, propeller pitch, mixture, and other settings. Each movement added work during combat. The Focke-Wulf used an automatic engine management system. A single main control coordinated several essential functions. The pilot could demand more or less power without managing every adjustment separately. This did not make the aircraft effortless. It reduced the number of decisions required during critical seconds. That advantage was difficult to see from another cockpit. It became obvious during inspection. The captured machine contained other examples of practical design. Its electrical systems replaced many hydraulic or mechanical arrangements. Panels allowed important components to be reached without dismantling large sections. The landing gear had a wide track compared with the Spitfire that offered greater stability while moving across an airfield. The cockpit was small but organized around combat tasks. The pilot sat beneath a clear canopy with excellent visibility. British evaluators considered the view unusually good. The controls felt direct and carefully harmonized. Nothing suggested an experimental aircraft rushed into service. This was a mature fighting machine. The first British flight trials began at Farnborough in early July. The aircraft now carried British roundels to prevent a fatal identification error. Test pilots approached it cautiously. They were flying an enemy design without normal factory support. There was no complete British maintenance organization behind it. Replacement parts could not be ordered. A serious mechanical failure could destroy their only intact example. Even with those limits, the trials produced valuable measurements. The Focke-Wulf accelerated rapidly after power was applied. Its initial climb was strong. Its controls remained effective at high speed. The most striking quality appeared when the pilot moved the stick sideways. The aircraft rolled exceptionally fast. A Spitfire pilot, following a sudden reversal, could lose position almost immediately. This explained reports from combat over France. German pilots could reverse direction before their opponents responded. They could convert a small opening into separation. They could also spoil an attacker's aim with a violent change of bank. The British were not discovering an invincible aircraft. The trials identified weaknesses as well. The Focke-Wulf's turning circle was generally wider than the Spitfire's. Its engine could lose performance at greater altitude. Its landing approach demanded care. The cockpit offered limited warning before a stall. These findings mattered because they separated reputation from evidence. Some feared the German fighter possessed every possible advantage. It did not, but the measurements also destroyed the more comforting interpretation. The Focke-Wulf's success was not merely German pilot confidence. It held real performance advantages over Britain's standard Spitfire Mk V. Controlled comparison would show exactly how serious those advantages were. The captured fighter now needed an opponent. The Royal Air Force supplied the aircraft its squadrons depended upon most. The next trials placed the Focke-Wulf against an operational Spitfire. For British observers, this was the decisive test. They were about to recreate the Channel battles without ammunition. This time, every advantage could be watched from the ground. The comparison began with level speed at several heights. The result consistently favored the German aircraft near the ground. The Focke-Wulf was roughly 30 miles per hour faster. That advantage remained substantial through much of the tested altitude range. A pursuing Spitfire Mk V could not simply close by holding full power. If both aircraft began with similar speed, the German pilot could pull away. The same advantage shaped offensive combat. The Focke-Wulf could approach, fire, and escape before the Spitfire recovered position. Speed gave its pilot choices. The slower pilot had fewer. Acceleration deepened the problem. When both aircraft flew slowly together, the German fighter gained speed sooner. This allowed it to transform a temporary opening into a safe separation. The Spitfire could turn more tightly. Yet turning consumed energy, and reduced speed. A German pilot refusing the turning contest could avoid that British strength. The climb results required more careful interpretation. At lower and medium heights, the Focke-Wulf climbed extremely well. Its initial climb could leave the Spitfire struggling behind. At greater heights, the balance became less favorable to the German fighter. Its radial engine lost some of its advantage as altitude increased. That weakness offered possibilities. It did not erase the danger where many channel battles occurred. The roll comparison produced the most dramatic difference. At higher speeds, the Spitfire's controls became increasingly heavy. Rapid changes of bank demanded greater physical effort. The Focke-Wulf remained remarkably responsive. It could roll into a steep dive almost instantly. A pursuing Spitfire might recognize the maneuver but respond too slowly. British evaluators translated this observation into a practical warning. Following every German reversal could place the Spitfire at a growing disadvantage. Each delayed response gave the Focke-Wulf more distance. A second reversal could completely break contact. The dive presented another difficult situation. The German aircraft accelerated quickly when its nose dropped. Its controls allowed the pilot to enter the maneuver without hesitation. A Spitfire beginning from equal conditions might not catch it. The British fighter needed an existing advantage in height or speed. Without that advantage, pursuit could waste fuel and invite another attack. The trials also examined turning combat. Here the Spitfire recovered some authority. It could complete a tighter level turn than the Focke-Wulf. A German pilot accepting a sustained turning fight risked being outmaneuvered. British pilots therefore had one clear strength to exploit, but reaching that contest depended upon the opponent's cooperation. An experienced German pilot knew his aircraft's advantages. He could avoid fighting on British terms. The evaluations explained why earlier encounters had felt so one-sided. The Focke-Wulf did not defeat the Spitfire through one mysterious quality. Several advantages supported one another. Speed enabled the German pilot to control distance. Acceleration helped him regain lost energy. Roll rate allowed rapid changes of direction. A strong dive provided another route out of danger. Heavy armament punished even a brief mistake. Together, these qualities created tactical freedom. That freedom had been visible in combat reports. The captured aircraft revealed its mechanical foundation. British pilots now had to abandon several dangerous instincts. They could not assume a fleeing Focke-Wulf would be caught. They could not copy every roll during a defensive maneuver. They could not enter combat without considering altitude and stored speed. They needed surprise, coordination, and disciplined positioning. The evidence also reached beyond squadron tactics. Britain required a fighter capable of meeting the German aircraft more evenly. A solution was already emerging from urgent development work. The Spitfire airframe still possessed considerable potential. A more powerful engine could change the contest. The resulting Spitfire Mk IX was not created from the captured aircraft alone. Work had begun before Faber's mistaken landing. Combat experience had already established the need. However, the trials provided precise confirmation of that need. They also allowed direct comparison with the new British variant. The Mk IX brought improved high-altitude performance and greater power. It narrowed or reversed several disadvantages suffered by the Mk V. Yet even this comparison did not produce a simple declaration of superiority. Performance changed with altitude, speed, and maneuver. The lesson from the captured aircraft was more useful than a slogan. No fighter was strongest everywhere. Victory depended upon knowing exactly where each advantage began. The Royal Air Force finally possessed that knowledge. It now had to place it in the hands of operational pilots. The test results gave formal measurements to a crisis already understood by frontline squadrons. The crisis had begun before Britain knew the new fighter's name. During 1941, unfamiliar radial engine aircraft appeared over northern France. British pilots initially struggled to identify them. Some reports described them as captured French fighters. Others recognized that Germany had introduced something new. Photographs gradually clarified the aircraft as shape. Combat revealed its performance. The Focke-Wulf entered operations while Britain was carrying its air offensive across the Channel. These missions placed British fighters over territory controlled by Germany. Fuel limited the time they could remain. German controllers could choose when to commit their fighters. German pilots often began with favorable altitude and local knowledge. The new aircraft made those existing advantages more dangerous. Spitfire Mk Vs had once met German fighters with reasonable confidence. Against the Focke-Wulf, pilots reported losing contact during rapid maneuvers. An aircraft that seemed cornered could roll away and dive. Another could attack from above, fire briefly, then climb beyond pursuit. The encounters were fast and confusing. Survivors rarely observed the entire sequence. Each pilot returned with only part of the picture. Intelligence officers assembled those fragments. Repeated details began to form a consistent pattern. The German fighter was faster at important combat heights. It rolled more quickly. It carried powerful guns. It could absorb punishment without losing a liquid cooling system. The evidence challenged more than British equipment. It challenged the offensive campaign's assumptions. British leaders wanted operations over France to pressure the German fighter force. They also wanted to maintain an aggressive posture after the defensive victory over Britain. However, the circumstances now favored the defending aircraft. The Focke-Wulf could attack when conditions suited it. It could refuse combat when they did not. British formation sometimes paid heavily without producing equivalent German losses. No single report settled the issue. Combat claims from every air force contained uncertainty. Pilots operated under extreme pressure and observed events lasting seconds. A damaged aircraft could disappear into cloud and return safely. Several pilots might claim the same opponent. An aircraft believed destroyed could only have broken away. This uncertainty made the captured fighter especially important. It allowed controlled trials to test the recurring observations. The results did not invalidate the pilots' accounts. They explained them. A squadron intelligence officer could now describe more than an enemy silhouette. Pilots could receive specific advice about what the aircraft would probably do. They were warned against prolonged pursuit after a diving Focke-Wulf. They learned that a sudden roll could create separation quickly. They were encouraged to preserve height and speed before attacking. They were reminded to use the Spitfire's tighter turn when circumstances allowed. Teamwork became essential. A single Spitfire might not control the engagement. Several aircraft could cover one another during German attacks and withdrawals. Clear lookout procedures mattered because the first sighting often decided the encounter. The safest response was not blind imitation. It was anticipation if the German pilot began a rapid rolling dive. The British pilot needed another answer. He could turn in the opposite direction. He could retain altitude instead of following downward. He could position a second aircraft to cover the expected escape path. These choices depended upon discipline. Combat instincts often demanded immediate pursuit. The trials showed why that instinct could become a trap. The Royal Air Force also compared the captured fighter with other Allied types. Each contest revealed a different balance. The Hawker Typhoon possessed strong low-altitude speed, but suffered serious early problems. The Mustang offered range and valuable performance characteristics. The improved Spitfire Mk IX provided the most immediate operational response. None made intelligence unnecessary. A new aircraft could only help if pilots understood how to use it. The captured Focke-Wulf therefore served two purposes. It exposed the weakness of the current British standard. It also became a teacher. Its controls demonstrated German tactical possibilities. Its engine installation explained its acceleration. Its roll rate turned vague warnings into visible fact. British pilots no longer faced an unknown machine shaped by rumor. They faced a measured opponent. That knowledge could prevent avoidable losses. It could not guarantee victory. Germany was also learning, adapting, and improving its aircraft. The contest had become a race between observation and response. British specialists found that the Focke-Wulf's strength extended beyond its flying performance. The aircraft had been designed for operational use under demanding conditions. Its internal arrangement showed concern for maintenance and rapid replacement. This mattered because fighters spent much of their existence on the ground. A brilliant aircraft offered little value when repairs kept it away from combat. The German machine used removable panels around important equipment. Ground crews could reach components without disturbing unrelated structures. Electrical connections supported systems that British designs often operated differently. The approach reduced complicated runs of mechanical linkages. It also allowed certain assemblies to be tested or replaced more conveniently. The engine installation made an especially strong impression. The BMW radial formed part of a compact power unit. Connections between the engine and airframe were carefully organized. A damaged power unit could be removed as an assembly. Another could take its place without rebuilding the forward aircraft. This did not mean every repair was simple. Radial engines still demanded trained mechanics and dependable supplies. The arrangement nevertheless reflected a clear operational philosophy. The fighter was designed to return to service quickly. Its wide landing gear supported that philosophy. The wheels retracted inward and stood farther apart when extended. This offered better stability on takeoff and landing. The Spitfire's narrow gear could be less forgiving on rough surfaces. German forces expected to operate from changing continental airfields. A stable undercarriage reduced accidents during ordinary operations. Such losses never appeared in combat reports. They still reduced squadron strength. The wings contained another important concentration of force. The captured variant carried machine guns and cannon. Its weapons could deliver a destructive burst during a short firing opportunity. That armament matched the aircraft's preferred tactics. The pilot did not need to remain behind an opponent for long. Speed created the approach. Roll response helped align the attack. Heavy firepower completed it. The same weapons threatened bombers and fighters alike. British investigators could inspect their placement, ammunition supply, and access points. They could see how firepower had been integrated into the airframe. The aircraft was not merely an engine attached to several guns. Its features supported a coherent method of combat. Even the cockpit contributed to that method. The canopy gave the pilot a strong view around the aircraft. Good visibility improved detection and reduced reaction time. The seat, instruments, and controls kept essential tasks within reach. Automatic engine management reduced workload during rapid changes of power. The pilot could devote more attention to the sky. A few saved seconds could determine who fired first. These details forced British observers to reconsider the source of German success. It was tempting to explain the Focke-Wulf through raw horsepower. The intact machine showed a broader achievement. Its designers had combined speed, control response, firepower, visibility, and maintainability. No single feature explained every victory. The interaction between them created the operational advantage. The aircraft also revealed compromises. Its compact cockpit could feel confined. Forward visibility on the ground was limited by the nose. Taxiing required care. Its stall behavior could be abrupt. Performance declined at altitudes beyond the engine's strongest range. Some equipment appeared unfamiliar rather than automatically superior. British engineers did not need to admire every German decision. Their task was to determine which decisions worked. That distinction protected the evaluation from becoming mythology. Enemy equipment often attracted exaggerated reputations after unexpected success. Fear could turn a capable machine into an unbeatable one. Propaganda could push the image further. Controlled examination replaced both fear and propaganda with boundaries. The Focke-Wulf was dangerous within identifiable conditions. Outside those conditions, Allied pilots could challenge it. The captured example gave Britain a temporary advantage in information. Germany did not know every detail learned during the tests. British squadrons could receive guidance based on the enemy's own aircraft. Yet that advantage would not remain static. Later Focke-Wulf variants would carry different engines, weapons, and equipment. Allied aircraft would also improve. The findings from one captured A3 could not describe every future version. Intelligence had to remain precise. A familiar silhouette might conceal important changes. That warning became another lesson from the examination. Captured equipment answered urgent questions. It also taught observers which new questions to ask. The improved Spitfire reached frontline service while the captured Focke-Wulf was still being evaluated. Its arrival offered British pilots a more competitive machine. The Mk IX combined the familiar Spitfire airframe with a more powerful Merlin engine. This was an urgent solution rather than a completely new fighter. It answered a crisis faster than an entirely fresh design could. Direct trials showed why the change mattered. The Mk IX performed far better than the Mk V at greater heights. Its climb and speed allowed it to contest positions previously controlled by the Focke-Wulf. The German fighter retained advantages in rapid rolling maneuvers. It remained dangerous at lower and medium altitudes. The balance had shifted from clear disadvantage toward a complicated equality. That distinction was important. Squadrons could not treat the Mk IX as permission to forget the earlier lessons. Aircraft performance never removed the need for surprise and coordination. A pilot beginning beneath an opponent still faced a severe problem. A distracted formation could still be attacked. A poorly judged pursuit could still surrender energy. The better Spitfire expanded British choices. It did not cancel physics. Only limited numbers were initially available. Most fighter command squadrons continued using the Mk V. Pilots flying those aircraft needed tactical knowledge more urgently than optimism. The captured fighter helped instructors explain which contests to avoid. Its trials provided evidence that could be converted into squadron guidance. British pilots learned to recognize the Focke-Wulf's likely escape maneuver. They could expect rapid reversals followed by a dive. They could use the Spitfire as turn instead of matching the German roll. They could attack from advantageous positions and resist being drawn downward. They could also break off when pursuit offered little chance of success. That last choice required judgment. Aggressive fighter culture rewarded determination. Breaking away could feel like conceding the fight. The test results showed that discipline sometimes preserved the formation for a better opportunity. The air battle over Dieppe in August 1942 tested both aircraft and tactics. British and Allied fighters covered a large raid against the French port. German fighters responded from nearby bases, the sky filled with brief encounters at changing altitudes. Focke-Wulfs exploited speed, position, and local control. Spitfire squadrons fought under difficult conditions across the Channel. The battle did not provide a clean laboratory. Ground fire, escort duties, fuel limits, and confusion shaped every engagement. Loss figures and claims remained subjects requiring careful comparison. One conclusion was unavoidable. The German fighter threat had not disappeared. New British equipment had improved the contest. Operational circumstances still favored defenders who could choose their moment. The captured aircraft therefore remained relevant after the Mk IX arrived. Its value was not limited to proving that the Mk V was slower. It demonstrated how the enemy aircraft converted performance into tactical control. That lesson applied even when numerical differences narrowed. Test pilots continued flying the captured machine in comparative exercises. They placed it against different Allied fighters. Each flight revealed how relative performance changed with height and speed. A Mustang might offer one combination of strengths. A Typhoon might offer another. A newer Spitfire could challenge where an older version struggled. There was no universal answer. The evaluations encouraged a more precise language of comparison. Calling one fighter better was insufficient. Better at what height? Better during which maneuver? Better while climbing, diving, turning, or accelerating? Could it remain over enemy territory long enough to use that advantage? Could ground crews keep it available? Could new pilots handle its difficult behavior safely? These questions moved the discussion beyond reputation. They also exposed the limits of intelligence gathered from combat alone. Frontline witnesses saw what happened. Test pilots could isolate why it happened. Engineers could identify the mechanism beneath the result. Commanders then had to convert that knowledge into decisions. The Focke-Wulf at Pembrey connected all four perspectives. A navigational error had delivered an aircraft. The British response turned that accident into usable understanding. The British evaluation carried an important limitation from its first flight. They possessed only one example. That aircraft represented one variant built at one moment in the war. Its condition depended upon German maintenance before the capture. Its performance also depended upon British care afterward. Test pilots could not risk the machine as freely as a replaceable British fighter. They had to preserve its engine and airframe. Every hour consumed part of an irreplaceable resource. Fuel and lubricants created additional questions. German operating practices did not transfer automatically to a British establishment. The engine's permitted settings had to be understood correctly. An overly cautious setting could understate performance. An incorrect setting could destroy the engine. Measurements, therefore, required context. A recorded speed was not a permanent truth about every Focke-Wulf. Different production batches could vary. Later, variants could gain weight or power. Field equipment could alter performance. Weather and instrument accuracy also influenced results. The British reports were valuable because they described controlled comparisons. They were not magical documents free from uncertainty. This distinction becomes clearer when later accounts simplify the story. The captured aircraft is sometimes presented as the single event that saved the Spitfire. That interpretation gives one dramatic landing too much power. Britain already knew the Focke-Wulf posed a serious threat. Combat reports had established that problem months earlier. Development of an improved Spitfire was already moving urgently. The Mk IX did not begin because Faber landed at Pembrey. The capture instead provided confirmation, detail, and tactical evidence. It allowed British specialists to test assumptions against the physical machine. That contribution was substantial without becoming mythical. Another simplification treats the trials as a contest producing one permanent winner. The actual findings were conditional. The Focke-Wulf outperformed the Spitfire Mk V in several decisive areas. The Spitfire retained a tighter turn. Its relative position improved at greater altitude. The Mk IX changed the comparison again. A pilot's starting position could outweigh a modest performance difference. The reports offered choices, not certainty. This was precisely why the witness perspective mattered. Frontline pilots had described a fighter that seemed to escape at will. Test pilots discovered the roll rate and acceleration behind that impression. Engineers found the systems that reduced workload and supported rapid power changes. Operational analysts converted those observations into advice. Later historians could connect the stages. They could also see where memory and legend had compressed them. The strongest story was not that Britain knew nothing before the capture. It was that Britain possessed incomplete knowledge. The aircraft transformed a collection of observations into a connected explanation. Its value appeared in small details. Control forces changed differently as speed increased. The German fighter could reverse its bank with remarkable quickness. Its engine controls reduced demands on the pilot. Its view helped the pilot detect threats. Its weapons rewarded a short firing pass. These details explained a pattern witnessed over France. They also showed why copying the enemy's maneuver could be dangerous. The evaluation process demonstrated a wider intelligence principle. Captured equipment rarely speaks for itself. Its meaning comes from comparison. Engineers measure it against known designs. Pilots test it under relevant conditions. Intelligence officers compare the results with combat reports. Commanders decide whether doctrine or production must change. Any missing stage can produce a distorted conclusion. A photograph may reveal shape but not handling. A wreck may reveal materials but not speed. A pilot report may reveal an effect but not its cause. An intact flying example can connect those forms of evidence. Faber aircraft provided that connection at an unusually useful moment. Britain was still fighting for control over the Channel. The standard Spitfire remained in widespread service. An improved version was entering squadrons. The enemy design was still evolving. The information could influence an active contest. That timing multiplied the value of the capture. A perfect aircraft obtained after the war would satisfy historians. An intact aircraft obtained during the crisis could protect pilots. The difference was measured in decisions made before the next engagement. The captured fighter continued serving as an intelligence instrument after the first comparisons ended. British pilots flew it repeatedly under carefully controlled conditions. The aircraft appeared beside several Allied fighters during evaluation and demonstration flights. Observers could see differences that tables alone failed to communicate. The Focke-Wulf changed direction with startling speed. Its compact shape gathered momentum quickly. A formation comparison made those qualities visible from the ground. Senior officers could watch the enemy machine beside aircraft entering British service. This helped connect development decisions with operational reality. The tests also supported aircraft recognition training. The Focke-Wulf's broad radial nose distinguished it from the Messerschmitt fighter. Its wings, tail, and landing gear created a recognizable silhouette. Correct identification mattered during brief encounters. A pilot who misidentified the aircraft might choose the wrong response. Ground observers and anti-aircraft crews faced the same problem. British markings reduced danger during scheduled trials. They could not eliminate every risk. Flights required coordination to prevent defenders from attacking the unfamiliar shape. The aircraft's presence over Britain remained an unusual sight. Each sortie demanded caution from pilots and controllers. The captured machine accumulated fewer than 30 British flights. Its total flying time remained limited. Those hours nevertheless produced information unavailable through photographs or wreckage. Test pilots examined its behavior during climbs, dives, turns, and acceleration. They compared control response across different speeds. They evaluated the cockpit view and handling near the airfield. The aircraft's weaknesses received the same attention as its strengths. This prevented an impressive enemy design from becoming an object of superstition. One weakness appeared during slow flight. The Focke-Wulf could stall abruptly with limited warning. A wing might drop sharply as control was lost. That behavior demanded respect near the ground. The Spitfire generally communicated its approaching stall more clearly. This gave the British fighter a handling advantage in certain conditions. The Focke-Wulf's landing qualities also required practice. Its strong engine could obscure forward vision, while taxiing the wide landing gear improved stability but did not remove every challenge. These observations reminded evaluators that combat performance was only part of a fighter's life. Pilots had to take off and land safely in poor weather. New replacements had to master the aircraft. Mechanics had to keep it operating. Commanders had to judge how many machines were truly available. British observers could admire German engineering while noting these costs. The aircraft eventually returned to Farnborough for further technical work. Its engine became a subject of detailed examination. Flying ended when preservation became less valuable than mechanical investigation. By then, newer combat reports and later enemy variants were changing the picture. The original A3 no longer represented the entire Focke-Wulf force. Its role as a direct tactical reference gradually diminished. The captured fighter was eventually removed from service and scrapped during the war. That ending can appear surprisingly careless today. A unique aircraft would now be considered an exceptional museum object. Wartime Britain judged it by immediate utility. Storage space, manpower, and materials supported an ongoing conflict. Once specialists had extracted the necessary information, preservation was not the central mission. The aircraft survived instead through reports, photographs, and test results. Those records preserve the changing British assessment. First came uncertainty from combat, then came recognition of a genuine performance gap. Inspection revealed the engineering behind that gap. Flight comparison identified where each aircraft held an advantage. Operational guidance translated those findings into survival choices. The sequence matters because no single witness possessed the entire truth. A Spitfire pilot saw the Focke-Wulf roll away. A test pilot felt how quickly it moved. An engineer examined the control system producing the response. A commander considered how to warn hundreds of pilots. Their perspectives formed one intelligence picture. The enemy aircraft had forced Britain to revise its assumptions. It also forced British institutions to communicate across specialized boundaries. Combat evidence could not remain inside squadron reports. Technical findings could not remain at Farnborough. They had to reach the people entering the next fight. The mistaken landing, therefore, became more than a fortunate acquisition. It became a test of how quickly an air force could learn. The intelligence gained from MP 499 did not decide the air war. No captured aircraft could produce that result alone. Factories still had to deliver improved fighters. Squadrons still needed trained pilots, fuel, radar support, and effective leadership. Weather and geography continued shaping every operation across the Channel. Germany introduced new Focke-Wulf variants as the conflict expanded. Britain and its allies answered with their own improvements. The contest continued long after the first trials ended. Yet the capture changed what British officers could know with confidence. Before Pembrey, they possessed repeated warnings from combat. The warnings described effects without fully revealing their causes. Pilots knew the new German fighter could escape through rapid maneuvers. They knew the Spitfire Mk V often struggled to catch it. They could not reproduce the encounter whenever they wished. They could not examine the enemy cockpit after landing. They could not ask British test pilots to isolate each advantage. Faber's mistake made all of that possible. The British response also shows why evidence must be interpreted carefully. The aircraft confirmed some fears. It corrected others. It proved the Focke-Wulf was faster than the standard Spitfire across important heights. It demonstrated superior acceleration and exceptional rolling performance. It exposed thoughtful engine management and practical internal design. It also showed a wider turning circle and difficult stall behavior. Its advantage weakened under certain conditions. The machine was superior in crucial areas. It was not superior in every area. That conclusion offered pilots something more useful than reassurance. It offered boundaries. A Spitfire pilot could not create extra speed by determination. He could preserve altitude before combat. He could avoid a hopeless pursuit. He could use his tighter turn when the German pilot accepted that contest. He could work with another aircraft instead of fighting alone. He could recognize the rolling dive before separation became complete. Knowledge did not remove danger. It reduced surprise. The story also preserves the difference between observation and later interpretation. Frontline witnesses were correct that the Focke-Wulf had changed the balance. Their reports emerged from brief and unequal encounters. British test pilots later identified the performance behind those reports. Engineers revealed how design choices supported the aircraft's behavior. Historians can now place those findings beside development timelines. That combined record rejects two easy myths. Britain had not ignored the new fighter until one landed intact, nor did one captured machine suddenly create the Spitfire Mk IX. The actual process was more convincing. Combat reports created urgency. Development teams pursued solutions. The capture supplied detailed confirmation at the ideal moment. Trials refined tactics and strengthened the case for better performance. Several streams of evidence moved toward the same conclusion. That is how serious intelligence often works. It rarely begins with complete certainty. Witnesses report fragments. Analysts search for patterns. Physical evidence tests those patterns. New information changes the original judgment. The Focke-Wulf at Pembrey completed that cycle with unusual clarity. Its pilot began the day believing he understood the coastline below him. That belief guided him toward the wrong airfield. British observers began from a different uncertainty. They knew the enemy fighter was dangerous, but not exactly why. The aircraft answered both mistakes at once. Faber discovered that the coast was Wales. Britain discovered that its pilots had not exaggerated the threat. The machine standing on the runway was the decisive evidence. Its engine could be opened. Its controls could be measured. Its performance could be compared. Its strengths could be respected without becoming mythology. Its weaknesses could be exploited without becoming complacency. The deepest reversal occurred inside British assessment. The Focke-Wulf was no longer an alarming shape glimpsed during combat. It became a known system with identifiable advantages. That knowledge changed training, tactics, and expectations. It also confirmed a difficult truth about modern air warfare. Technical superiority could appear faster than institutions expected. Yesterday's successful fighter could become inadequate without becoming obsolete overnight. The correct response required humility. Pilots had to trust reports that challenged familiar beliefs. Engineers had to examine an enemy design without prejudice. Commanders had to circulate unwelcome findings. Designers had to improve an aircraft already celebrated by the public. The captured Focke-Wulf demanded all four responses. Its most important contribution was not a copied component, it was the destruction of uncertainty. One navigational error placed Germany's newest operational fighter inside Britain. British specialists turned that accident into measured evidence. The original reports had warned them. The trials confirmed them. The balance had changed. Now Britain understood how.